Welcome to the You Can Man podcast, episode 5. I'm Josh.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dave.
On this week's episode, I don't have the tools. That's not an excuse.
All right, guys. So welcome back. What you guys been up to?
Well, I feel like I owe some of our listeners an update on my Garmin watch situation because I was asked about it this week from one of our loyal listeners. Hey, Matt. So to fill everybody in, I lost my watch, my Garmin watch that I used to go running, and it was driving me crazy. Couldn't find it, looking everywhere.
But you knew it existed within a 10 feet
I knew it
radius.
existed in my house because my phone was connecting to it. I downloaded an app that was $6 to find it, and then the watch died immediately after.
Bluetooth sniffer.
Correct.
If I
it
remember
would sniff
right.
out a Bluetooth signal. Anyway, it worked for 5 minutes, and then the watch died because my phone couldn't find it anymore. So I go for a run this week, get back, and my wife is dangling the watch in front of my face.
Maggie
that's good
found
news.
it.
Yeah, Maggie found it. It was great news. I was very happy. I was elated. Somehow that thing snuck up in like her dirty clothes basket, right? So it got thrown in there, wrapped all up in stuff. And
Well, at least it didn't go through the wash.
it didn't go through the wash. That was one of my fears. Like,
Well, that was the next step.
that was the next
So,
step, and it
good-
would have been
good for
lights.
Maggie.
It would have been lights out for it. She found it, so all is well in the world, and I can run now.
I mean, that's like a $200 watch, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. So don't want
yeah,
to
it's
lose
good
those.
news.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I know Matt will.
I know you
Matt will
are. I
be
can tell. I
as
can see it
well.
on your face.
Josh, what about you? What's been up?
Oh, not too much. Super Bowl was last weekend.
Boring.
It was a boring Super Bowl. Not much to talk about. I had a couple interesting commercials. Nothing special. I think one commercial made fun of vegans, and so that was a big deal for like 7.5 minutes the other day.
It was a big deal. It was funny. Come on, let's be
That
real.
was a funny commercial.
It was.
It was probably the best one. There was also a commercial for the Kia Telluride
Is that how you
SUV.
say it?
Yeah.
It was a smooth looking truck.
Did you see it, Tim?
I only watched a very little bit. You guys know that I'm not into sports, but I did watch just a tiny bit.
Well, it's a car. This was a car commercial. Kia Telluride.
I can't believe I'm about to tell you. You need to go look at this Kia.
Yeah. Good for Kia.
But you do. I
Yeah.
mean, they stepped their game
It was
up.
kind of an uncomfortable commercial. They had this really southern sounding little boy talking about how his dad like works at the factory in West Point, Georgia.
I could do an amazing impression, but I'm not going to.
Dave, I thought you were going to bring
I'm
it
not
up.
doing it.
So, it was Forrest Gump-esque. So, anyway, it was a smooth-looking car, Props to Kia because
Nice.
they're not known for their rugged SUVs. Not that this one's rugged, but the
I feel like-
top-of-the-line model looked pretty
Were
good.
we swept away because it was like the Super Bowl and a commercial? But everybody in the room was like, that thing looks really good.
We had some car critics, and everybody would seem to be impressed. So, yeah, Tim, take a look at that.
Yeah, will do. My 8-year-old son, Luke, we did watch the game for a little bit, and he says, the ball never really moves very much. It's like,
Astute.
you're right.
You should probably turn football on a little bit more in the house.
Yeah, but then I sent that on a text message with you guys on
Right.
it and some other guys, and then somebody screenshotted some study where it's like 3 hours of play in an average football game is only 11 minutes of actual
Yeah.
action or
Yeah.
something like
I've
that.
heard something like that before.
Better than baseball.
Yeah, ridiculous. But hey, I did want to talk about the. I texted you guys this an article that I ran across where a guy is hiking. No, jogging. He's jogging.
He was
Do you
jogging.
remember what state
Trail
it was?
runner.
It was in Colorado.
Colorado trail running. He hears something coming up behind him. It's a mountain lion.
Flippin' mountain lion.
An 80-pound one, so not
Okay, right.
full grown.
So
but
I was
still,
I was engrossed in the story because it was captivating to me. But yeah, it was I think they called it a juvenile
yeah
mountain lion.
Teenager.
So, but still, it's a
mean-
wild animal.
You could get torn up by an 80-pound dog.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Much less a mountain
They
lion.
know what they're doing.
They do, well, to that point, when I was a kid, we had a cat, Dottie, rest in peace, and that cat would bring us dead animals like weekly, like peace offerings, and leave them on the front porch. And they always, 9 times out of 10, had bite marks on like the back of the neck. Like cats,
Instinct,
they're
man.
killing machines.
DNA.
So
the guy, he fought him off, right?
He fought him off. He did get injured. He got lacerations to the face and the wrist, I believe. The article didn't go into detail as to the extent of his injuries, but he did strangle the mountain lion with his bare hands.
Now, all right, so an important point to me that I want to know that I could never find was, did he use like his hands like face to face, eye to eye, like hands around the neck, or did he like take the cat's back and slap like a rear naked choke on or whatever?
I envision if he got bites to the face and to his wrist, I'm envisioning that thing
like the cat's on top of him and he's just
over him, and he just strangled that thing. Can we send this guy some man points?
Well, I want to can we get his number and call him? I want to get him on the podcast.
Maybe he'll be a guest because I mean the barehanded death by suffocation I think was the official. Whatever coroner looks at that.
I don't know about you guys, but we've got some kind of aggressive dogs in the neighborhood that they're kind of all bark and not bite. They've never done it, but I've daydreamed about what I would do to
I've done that before.
One of these dogs, and I'm like, I would rip its throat out if one of them got a hold of one of my kids. Do you guys daydream about what you would do to an animal that attacked you?
I've done it before. I read an article one time that said if a dog is going to attack you, you have to give them your arm. And then what you do is you wrap your other arm around the back of its head, and then you can just kind of...
Oh, you do a little
lights out.
It'd be dead before it got to that point,
Yeah, I don't want it to happen, but it would be kind of fun to...
Like, I've just even envisioned just sinking my fingers into its body because I would just be so...
Just angry?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think I could do it.
Tim, were you running this weekend in Colorado, and did you get attacked?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking up, because this always comes up whenever a story like this comes out, is the sensationalism. I mean, this is a sensational story, but the fear factor that the media has to play, right? So I did a little looking up of the statistics, because I like to do that. I like to be right. So cougar or mountain lion attacks are, at least fatal attacks, are rarer than... fatal snake bites, fatal lightning strikes.
You're about to say combined, right?
Fatal bee stings. Yeah. Well, just
it did never happen.
Yeah, it never happens. There's been 27 deaths in the last 100 years from mountain lions.
Wow.
3 in the 2000s and 2 since 2010.
But not this guy.
So yeah,
give that man a medal.
I know, right? Yeah. He needs a T-shirt.
He needs something
that only he has. That has "I killed a mountain lion with my bare hands."
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get started on our topic here, which is I don't have the tools. Yes, but that's not an excuse.
So as we're talking about topics for show topics. Thought about a lot of guys will use the excuse, well, I don't have all the tools that I need to do this job. And we're calling bull on that.
Because none of us do, right?
Yeah, none of us have every single tool that we always need for a particular job, right?
Right.
That's not an excuse. There is so many resources out there where you can rent or borrow tools.
Yeah, and this could be from a retail outlet, a tool rental place, your friends, your family. Yep, Mr. Tim here. Plenty of resources. Just ask, meet your neighbors, speak up.
So let's start off with a question. What was the last tool that you guys rented yourselves?
Last tool I rented had to have been an aerator. I guess I say it's a tool.
Plug aerator?
Yes.
Or a spike aerator?
Plug. So is it aerator or aerator?
I think it's aerator.
Aerator.
Okay. Sorry, aerator.
So,
anyway,
explain to our listeners what that is.
Right. So if you have fescue lawn like I do in the South, at the kind of the beginning of fall and around September, you got to poke a bunch of holes in your lawn so you can overseed it or put new grass seed on your lawn. So come springtime, grass grows, it's super green and looks pretty. So I think that's the last thing I rented. I don't own one. They're expensive. They're huge. So I borrowed Josh's trailer and went and picked up an aerator.
So I actually have one just outside our door here.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
But-
Let me ask you the question, plug or spike?
It's a plug. It's a friend of mine, Brandon's. It's not nearly as good as the one that you would actually rent. Sorry.
And you got to pull those on a riding lawnmower.
Exactly.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the riding lawnmowers, depending on how much money you're spending, are not like true lawn tractors, and so
Right.
it might be a strain. I think we almost ruined
Well, I'd have to
Tim's
pull it.
old lawnmower with
Yeah.
aerating
I'd be
my
pulling
yard.
it by hand because I don't have a riding lawnmower, so it'd just
Yeah.
be me, all
Yeah,
manpower.
and
You can't do this one that I have by hand for sure.
Tell me that again. Say that again.
an aerator is a solid rental.
Yeah, you gotta rent it.
It's,
You gotta rent it.
And the guys who aerate lawns, the lawn maintenance guys will
pros?
seasonally, have their own equipment to aerate lawns. They'll charge you $180 a pop, and they probably won't do as thorough of a job as you'll do.
Yep.
Unless you have a very reputable lawn maintenance guy that you trust. Renting it and sharing it is the way to go, which we did with my brother last season.
We did, correct.
My brother Jason and myself and Dave went in together on a rental of an aerator, and Jason just actually, while we were at work, he aerated our lawns, and we all just split the cost.
I was in the hospital. My wife was giving birth. But
I'm sorry, you're a hero. So we all got our lawns aerated, split the cost 3 ways. It was definitely a good money spent there. So
For sure. What was the last tool that you rented, Josh?
Oh man, the last one I rented was in the fall, and it had to do with lawn maintenance. That's kind of where my sweet spot is for renting tools. Those aren't things that I typically rent. The last thing I rented was a mini skid steer, also known as a dingo.
A dingo?
Sometimes it's a
it looks like a
skid
bobcat
steer.
to me.
Well, it's a skid steer that you walk behind.
Oh.
Or it has a little platform you can ride on. It's not the big boys that you get into, and mini skid steer might not be the proper term.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead, but I'm thinking in my mind when you actually rented a bobcat.
Yeah, the Bobcat skid steer, that was the previous fall.
Okay,
But
so this is a smaller one.
This fall, smaller skid steer, and I had a trenching attachment and a tilling attachment with it because I used it to dig trenches for my drainage to get the downspouts,
Yes.
pushing water away from the house. And then I also used the tiller attachment to smooth out some areas of my lawn, which I may have ended up making it worse than it was. But that's how it goes. That's how some of the home improvement projects go. How
What
about
about,
you, Tim?
Tim, I feel like you only loan tools, you don't rent them.
I have a lot of tools that I don't use a whole lot myself, and I do loan out a lot of tools. But the last tool that I actually rented was a commercial grade sewer auger, I guess would be the right term for it, or commonly referred to as a snake.
Well, when you say auger, I think something that's powered. Was it powered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it has a motor. It is essentially a very long steel braided, well, not braided. Braided is not the coil.
It's like coil, yeah.
Right, to break up when roots get into your sewer line. So this is a very common problem if you're on sewer or really septic with a line that's been there for many, many years and you have a lot of trees on your property. Roots get into little bitty cracks in the pipe, and then they're seeking out water and it clogs up your pipes. Anyways, I had to rent one because the minimum charge that a plumber is going to charge you is at least $350 probably to come out and clear your line. And so I rented one for, I think it was no more than $60. I think it was $50, and it did the trick. I mean, it's a dirty job.
That's a dirty job. I'm thankful that I haven't had that problem yet, but now I'm kind of nervous.
So I'm going to tell my story real quick, and then Tim, you're going to you're going to finish this August story because I think we need to get into it because it's funny. But last Christmas Eve of 2017, I was the guy that had to call the plumber to fix a clogged drain on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Wait, your main line or inside your house?
My main line somewhere between the house and the street.
Somebody answered.
How did I not know about?
Yeah, I don't think
I don't remember hearing about this.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're so ashamed you didn't tell anybody.
Well, maybe he was being kind. He was like, it's Christmas Eve. I'm not going to.
Oh, you know what it was? The Christmas Eve service at church. Like, everyone was at church.
Except you.
Yeah. My wife is packing up the kids, and I'm like, oh, the sewer's clogged. So anyway, I could have enlisted your help, but he used his like serious one. It took him 3 hours to find where this thing was. So I figure it would have taken us never to figure out where it was. And he used both clean out. So anyway, long story short, I paid through the nose. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I called a small time operation that was local, and he was closed. He answered his phone. He was very nice. He said, call, I'll just say it, RS Andrews. I don't know how big they are, but they're regionally pretty big here. They advertise on the radio, and I was like, oh gosh, they're going to be expensive. They advertise on the radio. But he said, no, these guys are still family owned. They do advertise on the radio, but they're still fairly small. They'll take care of you, and they're not going to rip you off. And I got the bill, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. So,
and they fixed the clog. Excellent.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah. So what Josh referenced earlier, I've had this my main sewer line back up before. Same issue with the roots. I had hired a plumber to do it initially when it first happened, and we couldn't find a clean out. Long story short, we found the pipe. I end up digging down to the pipe like a man-sized hole. Okay.
To create a new clean out.
So I pay this guy.
But you had an excavator to do that, right?
Yeah, my back.
Your back and your shovel.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So had to clean out installed. But then about a year later, it happened again, and this is before I got smart and thought I need to just go rent this tool myself. And so I had somebody run a camera down it before they did the auger. And they found the clean out that we couldn't find, and it was literally 4 feet away from where I had dug the big hole to install the clean out.
Can't happen any other way.
Anyways, so that is definitely something you can do yourself. I know that sounds really intimidating that I'm going to clear a major clog in my main sewer line, but you can totally do it.
The right equipment makes all the difference. And these things are not, like a snake. Even if it's powered, it's not a complex machine. There's a little bit of learning. You have to know how to turn it on and know the general direction you need to direct the snake in. But, it's not rocket science. Even with the skid steer that I've rented, and I've rented a full-size Bobcat before, I had zero experience driving one of those. But some video game experience goes a long way from your youth. I mean, it's 2 joysticks, and
so when the guy was giving you like the how-to when you were picking it up, you were like, I got it.
I find it hard to believe that they just let you have that.
It is weird because they didn't do any checking up. He didn't watch me operate it for 5 minutes. He
didn't want to see it.
Saw him roll it off the truck. He's like, this joystick does this one does this, and I'm like, I think goodbye. I got it. And you know what? I didn't ruin it. I got it stuck. One time, but other than that, I didn't break it, and I didn't break anybody else, and it was actually really fun.
That's some heavy machinery to be renting.
Yeah, I felt pretty good about it. While I'm out there operating it, I'm like, maybe this is my new calling.
Yeah,
I haven't had the courage to take the leap.
Well, I've never rented anything like that. I do need to rent a Bobcat to clear out a bunch of stuff in my backyard this spring. I know you're my guy. You're going to come over. You don't know it yet, but you are. But something that I rent a lot, well, not a lot, but have rented multiple times in the past is car tools, just in general. Like the one thing that comes to mind is a spring compressor. So change the springs on my car.
I own that, Dave.
See, Tim, where are you when I need you, man? I go up to AutoZone.
Hey, you got to ask, man.
But yeah, a lot of times I don't have the car tools that I need, so I'll head up to neighborhood auto parts store, and they'll rent you tools for free. Like you don't even have to pay for them. They'll let you
leave a deposit.
Yep.
And they give you your money back when you return the tool. So
they'll talk you out of it sometimes though. Like one time I went in there to borrow a torque wrench because I was changing some spark plugs, and this guy, I was like, "Hey, do you guys have a torque wrench I could borrow?" And he's like, "What do you need that for?" And I was like, "Well, I'm changing spark plugs." He goes, "Oh, you don't need a torque wrench, man." He's motioning with his hands. He's like, "You tighten it down."
And then a quarter turn.
And then he goes, and then you just give that extra little,
Yeah, I believe that's exactly 87 pounds.
Right.
I'm not mistaken.
So I left that store without the torque wrench.
Yeah, you've got to do your research before you go to an auto parts store, because if you're going to the auto parts store thinking that they're going to be able to tell you the exact tool that you need, you are sorely mistaken.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I mean, there might be that one old guy who knows the ins and outs of every car and he's just doing this for fun, for retirement. But in
Odds
general,
are,
it's not. It may not be the most experienced.
In general, and with the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, look, you got to find the oldest guy there. Okay,
Words of wisdom.
got to find the oldest guy there.
Yep.
You know,
the
it
guy
helps.
having fun in retirement.
Right. If you know, were you in the military? Yes. Okay. Can I talk to you, please?
Yeah, I like the Ron. There's a Ron Swanson meme from Parks and Rec where he's walking through a Lowe's, and the employee walks up to him and he goes, "Hi, can I help you?" And Ron Swanson just says, "I know more than you," and he keeps walking. That's how I feel 90% of the
Classic.
time.
That's how I feel. It's not always true, but I do feel that.
Yes.
Yeah. And in
often.
fact, when I go to the auto parts store, I'm going to look up ahead of time the actual exact part number.
Yep.
And I'll just walk up. I need this part number, and I'll just
Here comes Tim again.
spout it out. Or better yet, these days, just order it online and just go pick it up.
Yeah, so cars, like we've talked about some outside tools. There are, the big box stores do some rentals. We have some local shops around here that rent out heavy equipment, not even heavy equipment, but anything you would need around the house or in the yard. Dave mentioned auto parts places rent almost every obscure auto parts tool. What else we got?
Yeah, well, I guess we would move on to, we alluded to it before, but asking your friends is just a huge resource that Dave should be doing with me because I have some of these tools he said he's rented in the past.
Everything that I've rented, Tim owns.
Well, that does lead to, I was telling the guys before that there are tools that I have bought that I do realize that I'm going to get limited use out of, but that I kind of want to have it, and I justify it by saying, well, I can be kind and loan this out to my friend. So I own an engine puller, right? I have that, guys, if you needed that.
You
Like
own an
like the
actual
whole
engine puller, like
engine
to pull
hoist.
to lift
Cherry
it out.
picker,
Nice.
I don't know.
Good to know.
Yeah.
When I buy my old truck and refurbish it.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it stays at my friend Brandon's house.
Ooh.
Okay, and so here was the deal.
That's
like,
shrewd.
I don't want to keep this huge thing at my house.
Yep.
It's good.
But I'm going to buy it, and then Brandon, and he uses it more. He actually does more car work. He's in the middle of a project working on this old Ford Maverick. Anyways, so he's going to use it more than I am. And I've had over the years, because I probably bought it about 10 years ago. I've had other people borrow it for significant amounts of time. So like, I'll just I don't care. And
That's not something that you borrow for an hour. You borrow that for
because you're
weeks.
working on
Months.
a project, and Anyway, so there's things like that. I've got a transmission jack that's over at Brandon's. I've got a sand blast cabinet
Oh, wow.
that's over at Brandon's.
I'm not even sure what that is.
I was over at his house the other day, and I was
Cleaning parts.
like, he's got so much stuff that I've bought that's at his house.
You're going to lose track of it.
And I'm like,
You need
"Did
an inventory."
Did I buy that? And he's like, yeah, I think so.
Got to write your name on
And
it.
it's literally been at his house for 5 years or something. So anyways, if keeping tools at your place is a hindrance, like you literally don't have the space, or you just don't want to deal with some big bulky tool, but you kind of really want that tool, hey, justify it, because you can loan it out to your buddies, and maybe they throw you $10-$20 to use it.
See, I'm okay loaning tools to to you guys. You guys need to borrow a tool, 100%, no problem. But I mean, I'm kind of choosy who I let use my tools, because I want to get that tool back in decent. Like, I know I can think of a tool that I'd let Josh borrow, and I gave it to him in the box that I bought it in. It came back like it was unused. It might have been cleaner. All right.
Oh.
So I know Josh is
I'm
going to
glad
take care of
you
my
said that.
stuff, right? And some people, they don't know how to use the tool, or so that's my only a little bit of reticence.
Now, I will give the tutorial before I'm going to loan out
I
a tool.
believe that 100%.
And
in my mind.
especially since a lot of my stuff is Harbor Freight. Okay.
Ooh, you can't be beaten on that kind of stuff.
So I'm like, look,
Treat it nice.
caveat, it's from Harbor Freight, okay?
You break it, you buy it.
And in fact, sometimes I've loaned out tools and I'm like, yeah, I've used this a lot. It's from Harbor Freight. If it breaks, I don't care.
Now,
I literally told people
that's a
that.
philosophy. You buy a cheap tool, and if you break it, if you use it enough to break it, then you buy the nice one.
Yeah, David, tell us your philosophy on that.
I just told you my philosophy.
Tell us your phrase, your catchphrase.
Yeah, or
hey.
I could buy 3 of them from Harbor
No, man,
Freight.
my phrase, buy once, cry once. That's what I always say.
Yep, shell it out up front. It'll last you 10 years.
Yeah, that's kind of how I operate. I mean, tools are supposed to last a lifetime. They should if you take care of them. And so buy the good one, lasts a long time.
Yeah, I can see that.
Different perspectives on that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
to me though, if it's a hindrance to me completing a job, the money, meaning like that I'm going to have to shell out tons of money for the nicer tool, I'm cool with going to Harbor Freight and getting the cheaper one if it gets the job done. And maybe it's not going to last as long, but
well, I'm talking like hand tools, so pliers and wrenches and things like that.
I got you
but,
on that.
Like I don't own a table saw because I don't want to shell out the $500 for the
Tim
really nice
and
one.
Josh have one.
I know, and so I borrow
I've
yours.
got the $99 skill saw.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm sure we're all guilty of this. Sometimes our wives, my wife doesn't listen, so it doesn't matter. Sometimes they'll come to us with a project, and you're like, ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Tool buying opportunity.
100%.
Anybody guilty of that?
Definitely, I've done that.
Oh, for sure.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do that project.
Yeah, you can.
I just need this tool. Are
Right.
we cool? Yes.
Good to go.
Yeah.
But hey, compared to what you're going to pay a contractor,
Oh yeah, I've justified that before too. Like, hey, I'm going to save money and I'm going to have a tool at the end of this job that I wouldn't have had if I, hired somebody.
Tim's
to do it.
better about this than I am. I need to really make sure I complete my jobs. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah. I've
you
been
would
guilty
if
of
you
that.
were married to my wife.
Hey man, benefits. Sometimes.
Bethany does listen though, so
Yeah, she does. She
Hey,
is.
She makes sure you execute.
Yes.
What's the problem with that?
She is really good at keeping me on task and making sure that projects are completed for sure.
So Tim finishes the jobs. Josh doesn't finish them. Sometimes I won't even start them. So
All right, we got the spectrum.
Yeah, total spectrum here.
Tim,
Yeah.
come finish my jobs for me.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about a more formal approach, which Dave doesn't like, of an actual tool loan program.
Yeah, I'm not for it because you're going to have the whole community. Well, all right, Tim, I'll let you finish your
Okay, so
your sales
there's-
pitch.
Let's hear the pros.
Apologize.
Let's hear the pros here.
Well, 2 different things I'm talking about. So one would be actual tool libraries that are scattered throughout the country, and I will put a link in our show notes to a search tool you can use to find some of these tool banks, or commonly referred to as tool banks or tool libraries.
Do they have those like in our area? I've never heard of these before.
They do.
Are they like membership based?
Exactly. So you would pay different ones are going to do different systems, but the one I was just looking at earlier today, it had a tiered system. So you pay $25 a year and you can check out 6 hand tools at any given time, right? You bump up to the next level of $50 a
platinum
year,
level.
and you can borrow hand tools and 2 power tools at the same time.
Heyo.
And then it just goes on from there. So don't use that you don't have the tools as an excuse, because there's all these tool libraries throughout the country that you can become a member at for relatively cheap. So you're not having to shell out all the money to buy these tools yourself. Now, on a more localized level, if you were really gung-ho about this and wanted to get together with your buddies, our good friend Drew has started a program within the community at our church of starting to get the word out. Okay, let's get a database going of all the tools that we own, because not everybody needs to go out and buy the machete. I'm just random tool. So we can borrow from each other. So he's in the process of creating some sort of database that we can then go online. Maybe it's just something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet, and then I can look up, and then Dave can be like, oh, Tim actually owns the spring compressor.
The database would be nice, so I would have known.
Right. And then it's people you know, so it's not total strangers that you're loaning stuff out to or whatever. I mean, the tool bank or the tool library, that's a more community thing. So like an actual organization, the tools are housed at one physical location. So now what I'm describing is obviously all the tools are scattered in everybody's houses.
Right, like Tim or Josh has a table saw. Dave needs a table saw. I'm going to go borrow it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're local to each other.
So you could take the initiative to ask around, and maybe somebody's kind of got a informal group of other guys that, loan each other tools.
Yeah, and that's something. This may be an idea that you're hearing for the first time, and you can kind of take that on yourself if you want. Because, yeah, it does take some organization on the front end, somebody with the initiative to put this together. But, it does sound like a great idea because most tools, especially in the suburbs where we live, are not used every day. They might not be used every month.
Correct.
And there's just so much downtime with these tools. So I think it's a good.
It is.
Plan.
It's a good idea. I have the hurdle to get over of I bought this tool. I don't want anybody to mess it up, and
You're not
maybe
good at sharing your toys, Dave.
I will share with people that I trust. Okay. But yeah, it is a good idea because most people, almost all people, they don't have every single tool that they're going to need, for whatever job. So yeah, using your buddies, people people in your community, it's a good idea.
Yeah, and something this reminds me of, kind of like out of the Amish playbook, like back in the day, communities that lived close to each other, they shared a ton of resources, and some of those resources were tools. And we may do an episode on homesteading, but that's kind of one idea of homesteading is you live in a small community of people, and the community only needs to buy one of each kind of tool,
right.
And you could kind of share that.
Right. Or like we've heard of the old-fashioned barn raising. Well, the community would come together and they would build each other. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Absolutely.
They would come together and they would build each other's barns. We kind of really lost that.
Yep.
And everybody seems to think like, well, I got to have all of this stuff myself.
Right.
And we're trying to kind of buck against that. And that's why I want to set the example and loan my tools out, even though Dave doesn't want to.
You got to tell people.
Yeah, I mean, and
where's Drew with the database?
Yeah, and the sharing thing. There's a lot of we're not talking socialism here or anything like that, but there's a practical.
The S word.
There's such a practical element to some of these things where we don't have to go do everything ourselves and buy everything for ourselves.
Right.
There are a lot of friends, community to lean on to help us do these things.
Yeah.
I agree.
So hopefully we've encouraged you guys to start borrowing tools and stop using your lack of tools as an excuse to tackle your next project. So after the break, Josh is going to do our segment. So if you remember from previous episodes, what we've been doing is one of us will research a topic, we'll come to the table with that topic, but the other two guys have no idea what Josh is going to say. Back after the break.
This episode is sponsored by 1776 United. 1776 United is a patriotic and historically inspired lifestyle brand. They make the best patriotic shirts and apparel on the market today. I personally own many of their products, and if you want to don patriotic gear without looking gaudy, check them out on Instagram, Facebook, and at 1776united.com.
All right, Josh, it's your week. What you got for us?
All right, so this week's segment topic is going to be the death of the manual transmission.
Whoa.
Yeah,
man.
so this is automotive again. We've kind of been on an automotive kick, which is fine. But
this is so weird. Today I built a car online and chose a manual transmission.
Ooh, which brand?
Volkswagen GTI.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
It's a small car for you.
Yep,
You're pretty
I know.
tall.
Tall guy.
I'm gonna throw some points out to you guys. We can just run through them real quick. But as most of us know or feel, the manual transmission is going the way of the dodo. And so to start with, if you don't know what a manual transmission is, you may know it as a manual gearbox, a standard transmission, or a stick shift.
Yep.
Lots of different ways. Just to say that one must manually shift a lever into each gear and use a clutch pedal to move through the gears of your car. Some of you may not know what that means at all, but if you've ever been in a car that has the stick thing in the middle and the third pedal, that's a manual transmission.
It's the best theft deterrent system that you can buy these days.
It is.
Do you guys think that it should be mandatory that you should know how to drive a manual transmission?
100%.
Yes.
I think
I'm gonna say no, but I don't care.
Yeah,
So.
I mean,
it is a point of pride that I think you should
It is a point of pride.
Yeah.
100% should be able to drive.
I mean, practically speaking, what? Maybe you have this stat, Josh, but I'm gonna venture to say that 98% of the passenger cars, not counting trucks, are automatic transmissions these days.
Yeah.
Maybe you have that stat.
You've nailed that, and I'll get to it.
9.
Right,
So
okay.
that was the number?
Yeah. So real quick, let's talk about our first cars.
Okay.
And not in depth. I know we all drove manual transmissions. Which car was that for you?
Okay,
Tim?
I'm actually going to take a step back and say the car that I really learned on a lot was it was 90-something model F-150. That was a manual.
The blue one?
So it was my brother's big blue F-150, and it was a manual transmission. So learning on that thing, I felt like I could drive pretty much anything because it's this big truck and it's a manual transmission. But my first car was a 1990 Bronco 2 5-speed.
Yep.
Love that thing.
That's the car I learned on.
First car was a 1994 Ford Probe.
GT.
5-speed GT 5-speed. Terrible car.
Yeah.
Terrible car. I loved it. But it was a 5-speed. It was a manual, and it was a pretty easy car to drive. But driving a manual transmission, once you kind of learn on really any one, Tim said he learned on a tough one. Once you learn on an easy one or a tough one, you can kind of do it on every car.
Yeah, it's definitely, and maybe this ended with our generation, and we'll call ourselves the Oregon Trail generation. That's what I identify most with. Maybe we'll do an episode on that. But I drove a 92 Ford Explorer. It was an automatic, but Tim had the sister car, which was the Bronco 2, which was basically a two-door version of those first-gen Explorers.
So because I don't have a recollection of this, so did I teach you how to
Yeah, you
drive?
did in the Kmart / Old Time Pottery parking lot. Yeah, so take pride in that, Tim. You taught me how to drive a manual. So my first manual car, I saw Dave's 94 Probe, thought it was the best.
Straight creeped on it.
And so I went and got a 93 Probe GT, and it had a manual transmission. So that was my daily driver for a while. So the three of us around this table know the manual transmission. Just real quick, just to put it out there, 1894, two Frenchmen invented the first manual transmission. It was just a 2-speed, I believe, very simple. The modern transmissions that we know today, like the cone-shaped manual transmissions, which are also called the Porsche style, I believe, were introduced by Porsche in 1952. 4-speed and 5-speed manuals didn't become common really until the 80s. Really, they were mostly 3 or 4-speed maybe in the 70s.
Yep. Well, and on the tree.
Yeah, 3 on the tree.
3 on the tree.
So that's up on the steering column, right?
Yeah. Yep. So the shifter's on the steering column. So back to the point of the segment, the death of transmission. So who wants to guess the peak of manual transmissions in the USA?
We're both going to guess it.
By a percentage. So of cars sold.
I'm going to say 1972.
Okay.
I was going to go 70s as well, but for the sake of being interesting, I'll say 82.
Okay, you guys are way off. It was 1992.
What?
No.
Yeah, so 1987 to 1992 was considered the peak of manual transmissions. In 1992, 25% of all cars sold had a manual transmission.
So that was the most in terms of percentage that year. Wow.
Yeah, that was surprising to me as well because we remember the 90s.
We do, and you said that it kind of died with our generation, so people in their mid 30s. But I feel like not a lot of people our age know how to drive a manual transmission. But I feel like most of our parents' age, they all know how to drive manuals.
Yeah,
could be off on that, but
still 25% was the peak in 92.
Huh.
Now, there was a precipitous drop off. So by 2016, only 5% of cars were sold with a manual transmission. That's an 80% drop over 25 years. Last year, 2018, like Tim said earlier, only 2.5% of cars sold had a manual transmission.
Because it's basically you've got to special order that.
Almost right. Today. That's almost what it's like.
Yeah.
One more quick stat on that. In 2006, now this was only 13 years ago, 50% of all models were offered with a manual. So not sold, but like 50% of all car models, and then we're talking cars specifically, were sold with or were offered with a manual. Today, just 12 years later, that's down to 20%.
Wow.
So, there's a massive drop. So let's throw out some reasons why, if you're thinking right now, why is this happening to the car industry today? Let's throw out some guesses on that.
I mean, I guess it has to do something with fuel economy, which is interesting because I think that you can get a much better fuel economy if you know how to drive a manual correctly.
I think it's just convenience. I mean, my car, I don't even have to take the keys out of my pocket. I put my hand on the door and it unlocks, right? And so people don't want to go through.
So it's the dumbing down of America.
I think so.
Yeah, it's so that is the number one. It is purely a convenience factor. You don't have to learn how to drive the manual transmission,
right,
and you can just push 2 pedals, not move your hands, and drive your car. So the car industry is responding to that. That is what the consumer wants. Most consumers don't want to be hassled with the manual transmission. Now, back to your point about fuel economy, I looked into this a lot because I had that thought in my mind too, like, oh, well, manuals get better fuel. But that's not true. It's never really been true as far as statistically true that manual transmissions get better mileage than automatic transmissions, but today for sure automatic transmissions are much better fuel economy wise than manual transmissions. They're very sophisticated at engine speed regulation and switching gears at the exact right times.
Right.
Computers.
You think when to switch gears at the right time, but the computer absolutely knows.
Absolutely. So tied to the convenience and the industry responding, you have a cost factor. It is easier for the company manufacturing this car to only manufacture one car with one type of transmission instead of 2 or 3 or 4 versions of the same car. They're just saying, we're going to go automatic on this line, and that's it. Comfort goes with convenience. Safety is another one. So studies have been done on drivers and their passengers, and drivers of automatic transmission cars have basically the same level of stress as their passengers while they're driving. Manual transmission drivers have a heightened stress level just by driving.
See, I was going to ask you guys, I personally think that driving a manual transmission makes you a better driver because more processes have to go into your brain before you hit that gas.
I agree.
Right?
Well,
more control.
I think you're more tuned into what's going on. You're actively thinking about driving the car and, shifting it, obviously, and you're just more tied into what's going on.
Yeah, and I feel that way as someone who knows how to drive a manual transmission. I think the argument is that there's just more pieces more things involved that can break down in the system when you're under stress.
Yep.
So
that makes sense.
Especially if you're a younger driver. Like I remember learning how to drive a stick, and it was when I couldn't do it, it seemed like an impossible task to be able to. I remember, how am I going to turn my blinker on and shift at the same time? So once you get it.
Fun fact. My very first ever real job was delivering newspapers via a car, not bicycles. I delivered newspapers for a period of time in that Ford Probe.
That's
with a manual transmission, throwing newspapers.
I remember riding with you.
Yeah,
I think one time.
Yeah, I think I made a couple people sick that might have ridden along, but hey, I had it down. So the last point on why the industry is moving this way, why we're losing the manual transmission, is basically a power issue, an ability to handle the power that these engines are putting out now. So I was doing a little research. It looks like the gearboxes on the best manual transmissions can only handle about 450 horsepower really well. Before you start getting into like NASCAR and drag racing, just these custom built things. These modern automatic transmissions with 8, 9, and 10 gears can handle massive horsepower. I mean, the Dodge Demon that has just come out last year, I think, has over 800 horsepower.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's an 8-speed automatic with over 800 horsepower. Yeah, just those automatic transmissions are just more capable today. So those are pretty much all the reasons why the industry is dying. A couple of, or why the manual transmission industry is dying. The kind of on a sad note, Audi, the manufacturer, has, as of 2019 model year,
don't say it,
no manual transmission.
What? They have some of the best manual transmissions.
Is that just the American market, though?
I don't know. Good question. We'll look it up.
I could see it. They've become such a, like a luxury car maker. I guess they always have been. But
even the R8, the Audi R8. So, Audi, all manuals done as of 2019. BMW has committed to offering a manual transmission, at least for their M series cars, into the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I can't see BMW ever getting rid of them. I mean, that's kind of tied in with the experience of a BMW, is it not? A manual transmission?
Absolutely. And so just a couple of notes on manufacturers and where they are on offering manual transmissions. We're looking at companies like Chevrolet offering Camaro, Corvette, and then the Spark and Sonic in manual transmissions. Dodge only having one model, the Challenger, in a manual transmission.
So it's going away, man.
Ferraris went away in 2011. So it is going away. We will see who remains standing as the last manual transmission operator.
So the Ferraris get rid of the manuals back in 2011.
But you still have paddle shifters, right?
Well, I was going to say
you have dual clutches, and so you still have to shift. It's just not a gated shifter and pushing a clutch in.
Right.
But they have the launch control, though.
They have that.
Got to have launch control.
But you still, the third pedal's going away.
Interesting.
So anyway,
too bad.
That's
sad.
That is the synopsis on the death of the manual transmission.
All right, Josh, great segment.
Yeah, it was
Thank
good.
you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in to us on our 5th episode. As always, please take time to subscribe to our podcast and check out our show notes at youcanman.com. You'll also find links there to our Facebook page and our Instagram. Thanks again for listening.